Today, I want to talk about one of the best-selling, most forgettable comic books of all time, and it's 1992's first issue of Youngblood. What makes this comic book so special? What makes it so forgettable? And how does it continue to influence the comic book industry until the present? Let's go and find out. In 1992, 7 artists left Marvel Comics to start their own comics industry, Image Comics. And with that, they brought about a lasting revolution in comics. From now on, comics would be published on better paper and with better colors. They would no longer be censored, and creators would retain the rights to their own work. And they did so with great success. The first issue of Youngblood sold 2.5 million copies. And at the same time, Marvel, a few years later, almost went bankrupt. Nowadays, nobody really remembers Youngblood or its characters, while Marvel has re-established itself as comic books' first and foremost publishing house. So what was Image Comics actually about? Well, it's in the name really. Image Comics was about liberating the image, liberating the artist from editorial oversight and censorship rules. Remember Marvel Comics. All the stories told in Marvel Comics are related to each other. It's one shared universe. So, to maintain coherency and logicality in these stories, Marvel needs a lot of writers and editors. But that can be stifling for artists. Furthermore, at Marvel Comics, artists have little or no control over their own creations. The copyrights go to Marvel, which does whatever they want with those characters that creators actually made. Finally, in the 1990s, Marvel still worked with old-fashioned censorship rules that prevented artists from showing blood or skin. To deal with these issues, artists decided to simply leave Marvel, start their own company, and then adhere to a number of strict rules. From that moment onwards, artists would work within their own studios without editorial oversight. They would retain the copyrights to their own works, and they would no longer adhere to old-fashioned censorship rules. This new situation unleashed enormous creativity, and fans really picked up on it. However, after some time, issues arose. Take for an example this first issue of Youngblood. It oozes this kind of raw, dark, steamy atmosphere that was really popular in the early 1990s. We have violent androids, people with skulls not on their shirts but on their faces, and of course a lot of barely clothed ladies. But when we start looking at the story, we see that it's jumbled, chaotic, that it barely makes sense and at the same time is very predictable. These artists were capable of making great artwork, but they were not the best of storytellers. Furthermore, when we look a bit closer, we start to see that a lot of these new characters bear striking resemblance to older Marvel characters. Bear with me here. Deadlock looks a lot like Wolverine, and Die Hard looks a lot like Deadpool, and Prophet is merely a clone of Shatterstar. In short, these characters were not very original. Finally, readers had to wait months and months for new installments on their favorite series. Between the first and second issue of Youngblood were 3 months. Between the second and the third issue were 4 months. Between the fifth and the sixth issue were a whopping 11 months of waiting. Nobody could stay committed about this story, and Youngblood, after 10 issues, simply fizzled out. Other Image artists went a different way. Todd McFarlane created Spawn and strictly adhered to a monthly publishing schedule. Again, the story is not very original. A mercenary is shot and left for dead by his friends, goes to hell, then strikes a deal with the devil to return to Earth and exact vengeance, but at what price? Because now Spawn is of course a pawn in a hell and heaven game. But McFarlane knew that he was not the best of writers, so what he would do was attract top writers from the comic book industry to write his comic. Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Frank Miller all came along on the Spawn train. And after some time, he also started to attract other artists to draw the Spawn comics, with Todd McFarlane taking a step back and doing general oversight. But we see what is happening here, right? Spawn developed into the one thing that image artists always wanted to destroy: studio-owned work-for-hire comic books. In 2002, Todd McFarlane even came into legal conflict with Neil Gaiman over the copyrights over this character, Angela. Neil Gaiman said that he had thought of the character and so should have the copyrights, but Todd McFarlane said that Angela had appeared in his Spawn comic, so the copyrights were his. So, by the early 2000s, Image Comics was at a crossroads. The Youngblood model had fizzled out, and Spawn was still doing okay, but it had reached a creative and production-wise standstill. But the publishing house recouped by returning to its roots, transforming from a collective of studios into a platform for mature, creator-owned content. In the years that followed, Image Comics became a hub for comics with underground roots and mainstream appeal that could not find a home at Marvel or DC. And these include, for example, Kick-Ass, The Walking Dead, and many more. The first issue of Youngblood may have justifiably been forgotten, but its influence on the comic industry lasts onto the present. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell. And especially ringing the bell is important, because with all these bells I will exchange them for photon torpedoes, which I will then use to conquer the entire galaxy.